What I'm interested in is staying in my own atelier, like a painter, and making my own art. When Philippe Garrel began making films as a young man in 1964, he did so without a script, driven only by a need to create his own art. But, of course, that art would confront and become entangled with the fates of the new wave, and with the seismic spasm of 1968. Europe burned. But, rather than scaling up and losing his mind, think Godard flipping cars in polychrome, Garrel brought to bear a ravishing, provocative and tragic lens, a cinema of secular, though subtle prophecies. Bedrooms, kitchen tables, cafes, forest roads and tunnels, bedsheets. This was and remains scintillating, convulsive stuff. A bit of shock and awe, slap and tickle, but neatly contained, composed and magisterial. And he hasn't really stopped. So here's two films, both sparse, both black and white, 1968 and 2017. Le Révélateur and Lover for a Day, a lifetime between them. In a 2018 interview with Mubi, Garrel claimed that he has been making the same films all along. That's 34, for anyone keeping count. But is that actually true? And can it ever really be true? Has the avenging miniaturist of the new wave actually stayed the course? Or has he kind of, gone limp with the years? This is MoveTube, a film podcast brought to you by Saddam Hussein's Bath Party. Joining me in discussion as ever is Ralph Pritchard. Ralph, did you love these films for a day, or was it over all too quickly?
I mean, there are two very distinct experiences at hand here. The first is Le Révélateur, which was made during May 68, during the real height of this cultural moment. It was made in Munich, far away from the action. And it's an experimental film. It uses images of a mother, a father, and a son, a child, that are quite enigmatic, quite Freudian, they conjure up theories of attachment. They're very essential and psychoanalytical. And Lover for a Day, I would say, has the same fixation with the psychoanalytical, but it's a lot more literal. It is a straight down the line narrative piece about relationships, this one's not actually about infidelity, but a lot of his later work is about infidelity.
It is in a way. I mean, infidelity does happen. Not like a marital infidelity, but
there is infidelity, of course. Every French film
it's
has
French.
But
it's not central. Like, it's not a framing, like central framing device or anything. It's just a part of the kind of warp and weft of Lover for a Day. It just it is what it is. It's
so
about
as far as
infidelity.
As you alluded to in the intro, like, in as far as he says he's been making the same film all along, there is a preoccupation with father, mother, lover, these sort of dynamics. And the plot of Lover for a Day is an older man whose daughter comes to stay with him after a messy breakup while he's dating a woman her age, who then proceeds to cuckold him in a humiliating fashion.
Absolute pimp.
I mean, I was just if it's not been made clear already, I was intensely frustrated by the norminess of Lover for a Day, and Le Révélateur, which is a film I've loved for a long time, lost a little bit of its avant-garde edge with the addition of Lover for a Day and other. I watched a few of his other later works.
So that kind of coloured your kind of retroactive glance at it, your kind of memory. It's kind of spoiled the appreciation for
either that, or its charm has worn off through it not enduring through a fifth viewing. I mean, I have it's been a big one for me, Le Révélateur. I mean, when I saw it when I was a teenager, and I was like, wow, you can make films like this. Like, these are the sorts of atmospheric.
Well, you can make
images I wanted to make.
Almost entirely silent film. It's like there's no dialogue. You can tell a story through gestures and through choreographed actions, and using literally three characters, using light. It's Michel Fournier, the cinematographer, who also worked with Garrel on the Virgin's Bed, which was like literally a year later, which was just like equally. Well, we could talk about Virgin's Bed as well. Virgin's Bed shares a lot of similar aesthetic, visual concerns with the Le Révélateur. And it's interesting because Révélateur is a film, you know, like you said, it's shot during May 68. It's obsessed with this prophetic, it's like the secular prophecy. It's extremely kind of fired with, immured in, like you said, this kind of Oedipal relationship, but also this kind of transformative thing. It's an allegorical story told without language. You know, there's lots of people carrying people falling down, child embracing mother.
I suppose because it lacks the verbal, those allegories don't feel as clunky as they might otherwise do. No,
actually, yeah. If there was like, and because Pasolini was always someone that kind of embraced the allegorical, and sometimes, you know, it's very obvious what Pasolini is doing. It can kind of ruin the enjoyment a little bit sometimes. But I think having a non-vocalized, non-verbal approach to allegory, it kind of, we know it's telling us more about than what is going on at the surface. This is a kind of, because it is youth. It's youth within youth, because the parent figures are not elderly, they're not geriatric, they're actually young themselves. They're like early 20s or something. They've got this young child, so it's not even like the relationship between Urizen and you know, sort of like the subject. It's a relationship between already young people and even younger. And that kind of, this overall riding sense from this film is a strangeness and a kind of dread, right? Because there's this constant threat that is circulating through it. You know, they kind of embrace each other with this kind of, these hurried kind of embraces and grasps. There's a lot of like running through woods, looking horrified into the camera, staring down the camera, crawling through the mud. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of threat. They are not safe, I guess, is the point here, right?
Yeah, one almost thought of Time of the Wolf, actually, a previous MoodTube review about kind of a family enduring. There's some sense of crisis, especially in the later scenes where they're sort of hiding behind little sort of molehills. There's a sense of danger and a sense of protection. I guess a lot of the fundamental feelings of family stuff to do with fearing for someone you love, being upset when people you love are when the parents are fighting, a feeling of wanting protection, a feeling of wanting to get away, a feeling of wanting to get lost in one's own world. There's an amazing bit where the child plays with a little teddy. It's all really like basic and simple and obvious, which I love. I really love that. That's the spiritual element. As you say, it's like secular spirituality. And that's, I guess, you know, that's why it ties in with, I was going to say Tarkovsky, he's not secular at all. But in as far as he's an artist and he makes images, for me, like filmmaking is my religion, right? So the stuff that's compelling for me is...
Dominus Patri, etc. Yes, actually, when the director signals, and when the director says action, really he's genuflecting before the cross. The cross is the lens.
But yeah, there's a lot like The Virgin's Bed, which I watched actually, which is also a movie. Great. Yeah, that's good fun, and it's a bit chaotic and mad.
It's a bit chaotic. It's got big dick energy for the 60s because it's got like a Nico soundtrack.
Oh yeah,
Zuzu is the Virgin is Mary, so it's like this star-studded. It's like the luminaries of the 60s, whereas this is a much more kind of miniature. Like Le Révélateur is a much more miniature thing. He fully stepped in. Like the next film he makes this film, which is quite prophetic in a kind of subtle way. About this young family teetering on the edge, as it were, the brink of the possible future that 1968 was ushering in. A doomed future as well. And 1969, a literal retelling of the story of Jesus. Like he's not like bashful when it comes to talking about the significance of his own art and the movement that he was part of. He's like, this is Jesus stuff. This is like it's all bound up with like the enthusiasm of the 68, but without kind of like the smugness of like the situationists and the smugness of like the kind of hippie as a figure, cultural figure, like because in Virgin's Bed Jesus is kind of this ultra hippie character, but it's not cringy when you watch it looking back on it years later, which often happens with kind of radical movements. You look back on what was kind of challenging then and you kind of cringe a bit. But I don't really cringe with Virgin's Bed, and I certainly don't cringe with Le Révélateur, because like you said, it's kind of basic, simple stuff, which is quite moving just on its own.
Yeah, it's the lack of cringe is kind of I mean, it has a naivety to it, maybe. I don't know if that word's appropriate, but I guess so looking a bit later on into his career, I did watch L'Enfant Secret, which is a film he made in 1979, a bit of biography about Garrel. He dated Nico for quite a while through
10
the
years,
through the arduous heroin addiction that eventually killed her. L'Enfant Secret, which is it's very poetic again. It's kind of got a more experimental, rough around the edges feel, and it's very autobiographical. He gets two actors to play him and Nico in this film, L'Enfant Secret. There are just a few really stunning images in it, and it has this very. Again, he's kind of interested in the montage and time unfolding. There's a lot of slowness to it. Anyway, in this video essay, which we can link to, we never link to anything, by the way, so that is a lie.
We say we will,
but you can look it up. There's a film critic called Adrian Martin, who went all the way to Dublin for a Philippe Garrel conference. And the Irish organizer of the Philippe Garrel conference. Apparently, there are like only 12 people there, and they are like,
of course, they're
the only people in the world who really love Philippe Garrel. And the guy who organized like this way, it was the first time having seen L'Enfant Secret, and at the end of it, it's also on Mubi, by the way. At the end of the screening, he said to Adrian Martin, have we just watched the greatest film ever made? And Adrian Martin says, yes.
Yes. Oui. There is a because he was sanctified by Jean-Luc Godard, he's got this energy of this kind of like I said prophet earlier, and I think it's kind of like the prophet motive runs strong within him, right? Because he's got this maybe it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, I don't know, but everything he kind of seems to touch seems to be freighted with this kind of biggerness to it, which is certainly evident in Le Révélateur and Vierge's Bed. Has a kind of swagger about it because of that. And like all things, it kind of tends towards the pompous. And he is quite a pompous filmmaker. I think I'm not saying that as a negative at all, as a pejorative. I actually think it's part of what makes him so interesting, because he's willing to elevate the everyday to basic actions and basic instincts to this kind of prophetic, transformative space. And like, what is cinema if not a transformation of the senses, like a radical transformation of the senses? And that's kind of what he brings about. So you need these people. You can have your Bressons, but sometimes you need somebody to like literally fuck with Jesus in a film, and it makes it interesting. But that's so he continues making these films right throughout the 70s, 80s, and he's just gone on making, like, he's like the Marvel Extended Universe. This is like a lifetime's project
of 1968 of Paris 68. The Marvel Extended Universe of Paris 68. That's a brilliant description of Garrel.
But yeah, and so he's gone on and is on and on. He's like 72 now, I think 73. So he's part of the ancien regime in a way, and one of the, I guess, the living new wavers. Obviously, Jean-Luc Godard is somehow still alive, holed up in his house in Normandy or wherever the fuck he is. So that's like segue into Lover for a Day. Bridging that gap of fucking years and years. How does it for you kind of connect to the concerns of Le Révélateur, and does it feel like the film of a similar filmmaker, or the same person? Is it?
It doesn't feel but then when you look at it, when you try and make links, you can obviously find parallels. I feel like as an artist, I often ricochet between wanting to make something quite narratively conventional, partly just so that I can back it up a bit more and just say, well, look, there's a story being told there. It's, there's there's act structure, there's things unfolding. You know, I feel like a bit more confident in the world with a script that looks a bit like the one from Lover for a Day, and yet that kind of filmmaking doesn't excite me. I can write pages and pages of scripts that look a bit like that, but it's not nearly as exciting as Garrel's more experimental work. And yet what Garrel's experimental work lacks is the punch and the urgency.
Yeah.
Well, no, the later work lacks punch and urgency more clearly. There is a urgency to Le Rêve and to Lisa La Vierge, just because they're rooted in the '68 time, and the work of Nico as well. I think that they were quite the power couple, if a little dysfunctional, and that's quite exciting to behold. But yeah, Lover for a Day does feel like a rather gentrified energy. I don't know quite why.
I love that you've called it that.
Yeah. It's a gentrification of '68. But I get it as well, because he had a rough time, right? He went psychotic for a bit, and he wanted to kind of chill out, and you know, he's got kids now and everything, you know.
I mean, you can't make. I mean, this is the question, because it's like when you commit yourself to art, and you commit yourself to making art throughout your lifetime. Obviously, your concerns change with your age. The films you want to make when you're 24 aren't going to be the films you make when you have a child, or when you're middle-aged, or when, like him, you know, he's should be retired, mate, on that pension money from Académie Française or whatever. But so obviously your concerns shift and change. But interestingly, he doesn't seem to be making films about old age. He still seems to be kind of concerned with love, youth. I think the concern with youth feels very.
Who does make films about old age, by the way? I mean, there's Amour by Michael Haneke, but like generally speaking.
Yeah. But people might kind of identify themselves more closely with a kind of older protagonist, and you're seeing the world through their eyes more, I think. Whereas I don't feel these films are reflective, or at least I don't feel that Lover for a Day is reflective, because if you had said, "Oh, this is a film from like a 30-year-old filmmaker," you could believe it. You know, this doesn't feel. It feels like he's kind of. There's the power of nostalgia to kind of swallow you. You know, are you a necromancer or a necrophiliac? You know, are you raising the past or are you fucking it? And it's interesting for me because I watched Love for a Day first, and then I watched Le Révélateur. I've seen Virgin's Bed a few months ago. And it's interesting because you're right, gentrified. It is quite a bourgeois film. It has the minimalism of concern. You know, it's about heartbreak and desire, but it just feels very tawdry to me. Like, I didn't enjoy it. I found it quite difficult to care about these quite self-involved people. And like, you know, you mentioned Romer, and Romer talks about the kind of day-to-day self-involvedness of young people, but there's a kind of wry beauty to how Romer does it. Like, it's kind of,
that's the thing, because you messaged me saying like, why should I give a fuck about these self-involved bourgeois French types? And I was like, well, technically one could level that accusation at Romer, so let's explore like why you actually
let's tease out. I think it felt there's a self-importance to it, which was, I think, the choice of black and white for me is just such an interesting. It feels kind of like a juvenile stylistic choice. Like, it's like fucking Francis Ha, you know. It's like choosing to film something in black and white to give it a classic look, and it's like, but why? Color is so beautiful. Color is such a beautiful thing. And with Michel Fournier in the past, he had a cinematographer who absolutely knew how to wring the living daylights out of black and white film. It wasn't just using a black and white camera. He knew about the chiaroscuro
and everything.
Light. Yeah. Whereas this is just, it's that very kind of crisp yet slightly soft, water-worn type of black and white digital cinema photography that's just kind of just a bit bleh. Their conversations were tawdry, their interests were tawdry. I don't know. I just didn't.
Yeah, the fixation on fidelity in films. That's something I'd like to have a moratorium on, actually.
Yeah.
Straight people in films discussing whether or not it will be okay if one of them cheats on the other, because it's
so
not
dense.
okay. It always ends badly. I don't know about in real life, but in films, whenever someone has a conversation, would you mind if I had sex with the other women? You know, and then they do, and then the person is upset.
Someone gets upset because they've broken a bond of trust. Yeah,
exactly.
I think that's it. Like, because here we've got different people upsetting each other for the whole film without any resolution. Like, I don't feel like anybody had a kind of moment of clarity or understanding in this film. No. The bond between father and daughter just felt kind of loose and abstract, and there wasn't like a moment for them through their shared kind of, it didn't feel like through their shared, because they both have relationship hiccups, like through their shared kind of relationship difficulties, that they came to some deeper understanding as father and daughter. That wasn't there at all. They just felt like mates. It wasn't like a portrait of a deep, meaningful, dysfunctional parental relationship. Yeah,
there is a deficit of bonds, isn't there?
There was, but it didn't problematize those. It just, I think it just came about through a kind of bad script. Because like you said, there's a lot of conversations that are like, sort of, oh, will you call me back? I don't know. Blah, blah, blah. And it's lots of just kind of relationship guff that for me had no kind of like, what's this? Why? I don't get it.
Who
like,
did
why?
you find to be hotter, Ariane or Jeanne?
Ariane, naturally. But partly maybe that's the cruelty. I was so quick to answer that. What's your response?
I was going to say Jeanne, the daughter.
Jeanne.
I was more attracted to her.
I mean, as a person, yeah. But if we're talking like, if we're talking pure flesh. We're talking pure flesh, then I don't know. But
not sure I can distinguish the two, Owen. I'm a very sophisticated man. I'm very the two are just, personal. How could you dehumanize a woman so much? It's really disturbing.
Are you calling me out for objectifying? It's like, I don't know. It's kind of like, because when a director makes a film, they instinctively identify with one of the characters, I think, more than the others. And I couldn't figure out who it was here, and I sometimes like to play that game. I'm like, who does the director think they are?
I mean, ideally they don't, or if they do, it's like incredibly obvious. Like in L'Enfant Secret, the story is literally the story of his life for the previous 3 years, and so it's quite obvious who he identifies. And it's almost interesting to do something like that, because then you can kind of disrupt. Maybe you can even disrupt who you sympathize with when there's such an obvious point of sympathy. But yeah, I think here, I just think he probably sympathizes with the. No, actually, I don't know. I was going to say he sympathizes with the dude, because the dude is like so close to him in age and gender, and sort of like
he's a bit of a sad
reputation. And I don't think he gets much airtime, does he? Right? It's mostly
he doesn't really. It's kind of interesting because there's an amazing scene. Well, I say amazing. I don't think it's intentionally amazing. I just find it quite funny where he's hanging out with, because a lot of the narrative spins around the fact that his young girlfriend Ariane is obviously quite bit tempestuous and quite she's just in love with attraction, I think. So she has these kind of she's very easily attracted to people and kind of wants to pursue a bit of transgression, likes pursuing different people. We see a lot of scenes with her kind of having this like gasping sexual intercourse with people
in a public toilet.
So she's obviously
full view of the public, including him eventually.
Exactly. And it's like a lot of her kind of like she is the kind of tempestuous amour kind of character, and she's in the cafe with the philosophy professor. It's such like a kind of like fake porn narrative almost. She's like that she claims that she fell in love with him when he uttered his first words in his class, sort of saying philosophy is the art of the impossible or something stupid, something really pat like that they'd never say in the university philosophy course. And I don't know, it feels like a little bit of wish fulfillment about this idea of kind of young beautiful women falling in love with men, sad sack men, just because of their power or something. I don't know.
It does happen. Can I just say it does happen?
It does happen.
And you will be one of those sad sack men one day.
When I get tenure. I don't know.
We're nowhere near tenure.
No, mate. I don't know. Well, millennials are creeping barrage, isn't it? Millennials, when I'm 80, if I live so long, inshallah, I will be a millennial still. Just as boomers, but whatever. I mean, I don't know. It felt like a little bit of wish fulfillment. I just didn't feel I didn't feel like it felt very lively. I didn't feel any push or pull, and it's like it was more interesting because like when you look at Le Révélateur, it's like I don't know. He's quietened down a bit, and it's like I don't feel like he's obviously trying to scratch an itch because he's made so many films, or it's just good money. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I can't help but think that these more conventional films are better at do better at the box office, especially with like a middle class audience. But then but it's not a natural. I mean, you were making this this crude analogy about going limp in old age, but I mean, Godard is stiff as a board by all accounts.
He's stiff. He's on the Viagra, and he's on the Cialis and Viagra double drop. Like, but he has
le chou de bleu.
But like Godard is someone who's like stuck to his guns, and he said, I'm interested in making a transgressive radical cinema. It's not going to look the same every decade because he has reinvented himself, but he's always exploring the envelope of the possible in his films, and sometimes it works really, really fucking well, and sometimes it's just impossible to watch. But he's always been interested in that. You could even say the same of people, some people who made films for kind of a spanning decades. You've got your Agnes Varda and whatever, like people making films that are kind of, they're scratching something. It doesn't feel like it just feels like he kind of, I don't know, settled. And we don't stand for that on this podcast. We want people who are committed to the bit. We want people who are committed to the art.
I think the lust has to be there, right? I mean, I think that it's a weird kind of habit to slip into. And also the piano music is so like shit and like not really disruptive. It's the exact opposite of what he used to do in the 60s and 70s, which is like disrupt form. He is like abiding to like a form as if he's been told. It just really feels like someone's been kind of lobotomized or something.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that, because like these like bits of piano music, it's like literally an emotional cue. And it's like, why are you using this lame emotional
And there's
cue?
literally a voiceover that tells you what's happened.
Yeah. It's such an interesting transformation. I think this is equivalent of cinematic snitching. Snitches get stitches, mate. Like, I'm fine with it. It was like a perfectly average film, I guess. I just didn't feel there was any joy in the making of it. It was completely joyless.
Really annoyed you. You texted me in a state of rage.
I was a bit pissed, but
you weren't indifferent.
No, I know you.
I know you.
I don't know. It felt perfectly average and a bit. It just, there was no joy. It felt like there was no joy in the making of it. It was just going through the motions.
I mean, I think that some of his best films aren't exactly joyous, but they're like
but
urgent and powerful,
rapturous and urgent, like you said. Sort of Virgin's Bed and so on. It's like it's not exactly a delight to watch, but nor is Le Révélateur, but it's kind of transformative as an experience. There was one moment in Lover for a Day which I really liked, which is when they're having, it's like a dinner party, or they're eating. The professor's having dinner with a few students, I guess. Very normal behavior in France, and they're talking about the Algerian War, and they're kind of just saying all these pat sentiments about the Algerian War. And the philosophy
so weird that they're not talking about like a recent war.
I thought they were
so lost in 1968. Sorry, carry on.
No, exactly. They're going through it's the nostalgia industry of this film, but they're talking about it, and suddenly the film, there's this kind of like cut to a kind of old haggard man who's just looming over the table, and he's like, I fought in the Algerian War, and he kind of just speaks very honestly about it, and then disappears and walks off. Do you not remember that?
I do. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, it felt a bit odd. Like he just suddenly appeared there, like this kind of avenging.
It's like a shit version of that bit in La Haine where they're in the toilet and the dwarf comes out of the cubicle.
Yeah. In fairness, the veteran comes out of the toilet.
He starts telling this Russian story about like this guy who at a gulag who went for a shit. And he still had his pants down when the lorry full of gulag prisoners was leaving, and he was like running after them with shit falling down his legs. Anyway,
but that moment had a bit of oddity to it. Have we got much
more to say about Garrel?
No, I don't think we have.
I thought we'd have loads to say, but I'm sort of.
I don't know. I find myself kind of running against a rock with it a little bit, because I think there's a lot to say about his early work and to say about the prophecy, the secularism of it. But beyond that, I don't know. It's like his 60s films were like a tuning fork for the era, and painted this very radical, transformative thing. But I suppose in a deeper way, there's kind of a vacuum at the center of all his films. I think he's just trying to fill that vacuum, fill that void a bit. And I think that's with the 3 films I've seen by him, I think I can fairly say that it just feels like there's something missing. Even if they can ravish us, like I should like The Virgin's Bed more, and I should like Le Révélateur more, but because it feels like there's like an emptiness, in the heart of it. It makes basically his later films just very postmodern, pretty much, but in the emptiest way.
Postmodern is always empty.
Yeah, that's true. It's just, I don't know. It just felt a bit bourgeois. I think when you said it was a gentrified film, he gentrified himself. I think that's true. I think it's a fair accusation.
I mean, the only thing I'd add is a lot of the 68ers did. I guess that's an interesting. I don't know. I'm being funny now, but what does it mean when you have a moment like that where there is a sense of belief in total transformation, and it's ruled out. I mean, we've had that, ourselves in our generation with the student movement and then Corbynism, and now we're in a bit. It's all looking a bit more like a Russian short story. But are we gonna gentrify ourselves? Some of us will, but what's the future? What's the sense of the future?
And I think sometimes these things burn so quickly that they leave nothing behind. And I'm not saying the 60s didn't leave anything behind. It was a trash decade in a lot of ways, but the 68 movement has left left a kind of fortress of ideas and optimism that people still kind of obsess about. And it influenced people in kind of different ways when they became reflective about it. I think in the reflection, the reflexive turn of the 70s and 80s did that. I just don't think Garrel made that bridge with his cinema. I don't think it just felt like he just kind of ran out of ideas a bit. I don't know. That's why they're a bit disappointing. But I still recommend his 60s cinema. I just don't think you should go and watch Lover for a Day if you're going on a date or something. If it's on at the Art Picture House or some shit like that, go and see it. I don't know.
Yeah, agreed. And it's short as well. It's an hour and 15 minutes.
Whew. I mean, there's definitely some points in its column for that. Any film under 90 minutes is pro on this podcast. But I mean, okay, fuck it. Garrel in the bin. Let's talk about Bellatar for a minute, because I know on Sunday you did an entire Saturn Tango watch through. How was that?
I have a confession to make.
What happened?
I only did half of... Well, actually, I did 4 hours, 20 minutes.
You lied on your stories.
No, but I mean, I've seen... To be fair to me, I've... In my own time, on 3 occasions, I've seen Saturn Tango in a day.
What is linear time, anyway?
Yeah, but this the person my friend Sam, who came to watch it with me, he turned up a bit late, and then we ended up going for a walk and having some ratatouille, and it just wasn't gonna. 7 hours wasn't gonna happen. You would have done the same, I'm sure.
I would have done the same. We would have been. It's but
it's a great film, but people who think they have short attention spans watch Saturn Tango. It's very engaging. It's fucking slow. Not very much happens. The same period of time is mulled over twice, 3 times, 4 times maybe. It's dark, but it's rejuvenating and beautiful, and it resets your brain in a beautiful way. Bellatar should be applauded for that.
I think so. It's also being applauded for walking away from cinema.
Yeah.
Which I think is an interesting thing, because we're talking about Garrel kind of wringing the dishcloth out until it's dry. Bellatar kind of just said, well, that's kind of it, really. It's he said, unless a project comes up that really grips me, that's it. He wasn't saying I'm never going to film again, but it's I just the question isn't there for me.
Also in film news, there's a new David Lynch Netflix project.
Is there?
Coming out next year.
How far advanced is that? Do you know anything about it?
They're shooting next year, I think. It's called Wisteria.
Wisteria. That sounds like
very American. It's like the way you can come up with burial titles, Just
you
just know the aesthetic. You can Wisteria,
Dead bin. That's my burial AP
Did
title.
you hear my burial Corbyn memes? Lockdown, new cough.
I like it. I'm interested
Face
by Netflix, Lynchian Netflix thing, because he was like,
it will make them shit. I think Netflix always make everything shit.
He hates, like, he made a big aggro kind of. He did an interview recently where it's like, people watching, if you watch a film on a phone, you are not watching it
on your fucking telephone.
Your fucking telephone. But like, he loves TV though. He loves like prestige TV.
And I say, like, if someone gives him money to do something, I just wonder whether Netflix, because Netflix and Lynch are two big titans of the film industry, right? Mm-hmm. But I wonder who will be capitulating. Will Netflix be doing their most avant-garde original series? It would be their if they let him do what he did with Showtime on Twin Peaks: The Return, it would be the most avant-garde thing that's been. Yeah, because they'd
have to say, they probably just said, we want one of those, please.
But what if everything else they've put out, they've really mucked? Like when Black Mirror went to, not that Black Mirror was especially avant-garde in Channel 4, but it lost some of its, It lost its edge. I think that was also relocating a lot of it to America, made it lose its edge. There's a peculiarly English griminess, like shit, rainy fascism island griminess to fair enough. Yeah, I think I agree
Black
with
Mirror. Although, interestingly, Hard to Be a God, Alexei German's masterpiece was on Netflix for a very long time, buried in the vaults.
Really?
You had to search for it. I never encountered it, and I looked. I
guess I mean like Netflix originals, you know.
Oh yeah, it's not Netflix, but it's interesting that they did distribute through Netflix.
Gaspar Noé's Love is on there as well, but that's because that's basically porn.
It is basically porn. Yeah. It's like ID magazine porn. It's like soft. It's not soft. It's like neon porn or something. But I'm interested to see what happens with like a Lynch Netflix project, because he did a short film that came out on Netflix, didn't he?
Did he?
Recently,
okay.
With the talking monkey. It's very good.
Oh, okay. I'll check it
out. It's just a little fascinator of a film. That's all it is. But Wisteria, that basically just sounds like he's doing Mulholland Drive. It sounds very Mulholland Drive,
probably, which is no bad thing.
I mean, Mulholland Drive, we said this before, Mulholland Drive was supposed to be a TV series, so in its original form. So maybe he's decided to make a Hollywood, a kind of Hollywood mythology. But, Larry David's already done that. Curb Enthusiasm is like the Delphic oracle of
now that's what
LA.
I'm the post-COVID Curb Enthusiasm is what I'm really holding out for. That guy wasn't even wearing a mask. Larry
get out of my house, Larry. I mean, I am really excited for a although God, he's dead, the coach.
Funkhauser.
Funkhauser is dead. One of the best characters on TV.
Careful, you'll give yourself COVID.
Deeply good voice, but he died recently as one of the best characters.
Yeah, he was a great character.
Yeah, but that's kind of it. We have for this week. I'm kind of amazed when I thought we had so much to say about Garrel, but we've kind of run out of steam.
Yeah, I guess some of the good things about him are quite hard to articulate because they're just beautiful images, and then some of the bad things about him are pretty simple. And I think we've covered it. I guess there's some news coming up. We have the next two shows mapped out. We've got a guest, a friend of yours, Lara Alonso.
Lara Alonso Corona.
Yeah, they're joining us in 2 weeks' time. I've done it in the wrong order. They're joining us in 2 weeks' time to review Meek's Cutoff by Kelly Reichardt. So we can have a bit of a Reichardt sesh. I think I've seen all of Reichardt's films, but a long time ago, so I might re-dip. And then next week, I'm a bit intimidated by this prospect, but we're going to be doing Alejandro Jodorowsky's recent double bill of Endless Poetry and can't remember the other film's title.
The other one. Yeah, his return to cinema. But is it his return to form? To find out. I saw, let's give a little sneak peek. I saw Endless Poetry at the ICA actually. I wrote a review about Endless Poetry.
Oh, great.
I'm going to dig that out and use that. I think I really liked it at the time, but I rewatching it, I think
Let's see how you've matured.
Yeah, I think I wonder if I've soured to the project of Jodorowsky, but
I feel like I've soured to the project of Jodorowsky, but I mean, I'm willing to be unsoured.
Okay.
I often change my mind about filmmakers like during a long period of not having seen their work. I think I really liked Holy Mountain, and then after a while of like thinking about Jodorowsky, I thought, fuck that guy.
Fuck that guy.
But I haven't actually seen his films for a long time.
What if you took mushrooms with me in the 1970s?
But he never takes mushrooms, right? He never takes any. Anyway, we'll talk about this. He's totally teetotal. He just drugs everyone else. That might be wrong. I might be lying. I might be wrong.
That's also quite libelous to say. No, but yeah, I'm excited to do both of those. When we talk to Lara as well on the 16th, we're recording. That'll be kind of our Christmas episode as well. So,
yes.
I don't know how we talk about Christmas on MoveTube. But yeah.
Very badly. I don't
Very
think.
badly.
I noticed Lara said on Twitter that they're not really a fan of the Christmas films. I'm certainly not a fan of Christmas films.
No.
Are you?
No,
Die Hard
really.
is the obvious one.
I'm really interested in It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, I haven't seen that. Maybe we'll review that for Christmas. For
as
like
well,
Christmas.
maybe we'll do a little, because we're doing Meek's Cutoff, but maybe we'll do a postscript on It's a Wonderful Life, because I think I came to blows with somebody over this indirectly.
Oh, Daniel Neofitu, friend of the pod.
Friend of the pods. I think we came to very different, divergent views on.
Let's have Daniel back on the 24th. Review. Is it even on movie? Probably not.
No, fuck it. Maybe we could off-site movie. Maybe we could do a little mini-sode.
I love a bit of conflict. We haven't had any conflict on here. We always agree.
We haven't.
Except for Humanité.
Apart from Humanité.
Anyway, this is all getting a bit locker room. Let's wind off. Thank you, listeners, for
wind
listening.
off, is that what you call it?
What are you doing later? We're on Zoom, so there's not...
I'm doing later. I'm sitting in my home. It's lockdown, mate. But it's not lockdown anymore. It's whatever. Tears of the Clown.
But I'm going into isolation now because my flatmate's got COVID. But anyway, yes. Take care. Watch Endless Poetry, the other one, and Kelly Reichardt. Stay safe.
Stay safe. Peace out.
Bye.
Happy Christmas.